All right. So as I was talking about SDLC, right? Part three is SDLC. SDLC is the entire process of developing a software product. This is where everybody's involved, and we will learn about it as we go. Redwan is going to take over, and he's going to give a presentation on this. I will go and mute and have Redwan talking about this SDLC process.
Thank you, brother. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So today we will be learning about SDLC. We will be learning what is SDLC and what does SDLC stands for. So SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle. And what is SDLC? It's the entire process to develop a software. So, okay. So these are the phases that we will be having. So first we have the user requirement phase, where the user will come with all the required document, and he will come with all the required documents on how he wants to build the software. So the user will come to the BA, the business analyst, and he will give all the documents on how he wants to build the software. Then it will go to planning phase, where the business analyst, he will take all the required document and he will convert it into a calculated document that's called the SRS. SRS stands for System Requirement Specifications. And then it goes to the designing phase, where the SRS goes to designing phase for the graphical designing of the software, where all the designers will do the graphical designing of the software. Then we have the development phase, where the SRS goes to development phase for coding of the application, where the developer will do the unit and integration testing right before they send the application to the testing team. So as we see here, the system testing phase, that's where we will be working. So the system testing phase, that's where we as the tester, we will start testing the application, and we will follow the SDLC phase. We will follow the SDLC way. So SDLC stand for Software Testing Lifecycle. We will be learning about that in a couple of weeks. Okay, and then we have the UAT phase, where the end users, they will test the software to see if the software meets the requirements. The clients can hire their own testers, or they can hire independent verification and validation team for testing. And then we have the deployment phase, where software will go to a production, beta testing will happen to get customer feedbacks. And then we have the cutover phase, where many things happen in the cutover phase, such as add-ins, plugins, creating user manual, creating user trainings. And then we have the maintenance phase, where it's a future phase. Let's say that if the customer, he wants to update anything or he wants to add anything, we will start all over again from phase one. And then we have the configuration phase, where all these documents will go to baselining. Okay, so does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, let me read one. I think this is going to be very complicated for the new folks to understand. So let me go over it once, and then I'll hand it back to you. If you can let me share the screen. Okay, so if you look at this diagram, it's the same thing what's Redwan was showing. So like I was talking about, right, SDLC is the software development lifecycle, and this is like the entire company or entire project. Every single person is involved in developing a software product. When we go through a software, right, we use software daily basis. We are using softwares, right? WhatsApp is a software, Facebook is a software, iOS, all of them are softwares, right? We are using it. we may or may not understand from outside, like how it's being built. And this is where, we get to understand what's in it and how we build it. And here, what you're seeing, right, different phases where different group of people are sitting to do the job. And what is the job? The job is to build a software product. So if you look at this phase, right, look at this phase. It's a user requirement phase. What do we understand when we talk about requirement? A requirement is nothing but the idea or the plan, right? So for example, if you want to build a car, right, you will have your requirement, like how I want a car to be built. If you want to build a house, everyone has a house. Everyone knows when you want to build a house, you have your diagram, you have your plan in place. So for example, if you want to build a house, first of all, you need to have the budget. Based on your budget, what can you accomplish? Would you be able to build a full brick house based on your budget? Your budget would tell you if you are able to build a full brick house. How many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, what are the design you want to have in each room? What are the painting type? What are the lighting, decoration, everything, right? So this everything happens in the requirement phase, right? If you want to build a house, you're going to define everything to the construction people, right? You're going to go in and say, hey, I want to build a fully brick house, 3-bedroom, 3-bathroom, a living room, kitchen, and then the paint and decoration and everything else, right? So this is what happens for the software industry as well. In requirement phase, this is where all the requirement gets finalized. This is where people sit together and talk about the requirement. I'm going to go through this in more details. Let me explain to you what each phases represents, and then we're going to get down to the details about each phases, who sits there, what exactly happens. But for now, understand in this phase, the idea, the requirement, how the software should be built and what should that software have, what are the capability it should have. This is what gets finalized here in the requirement phase. So once the requirement gets finalized, right, that's when we start planning. After the requirement is done, right, we as a software building company, we're going to build a software, we'll start planning. How do we tackle this, right? The timeline and the budget and hiring people, and we build our own documentation. Like this is where it was finalized with the owner. Whoever wants to own the software, they will come in and talk about it and finalize it with us and give us money. And we come in here and we're going to be like, okay, you see, notice this wall right here. This is a wall. Within this wall, like only software companies, people are involved. Outside of it, right, there are, let's say you or somebody, a business person or companies, they can come to us and say, hey, build me a software that could do this and that, right? The functionality. So fine, that is already finalized here. And now we're in the planning phase. We're going to internally plan, like this is how we're going to build it. This is how many people are going to work. This is the timeline. And this is the money we get. Once that planning is done, right, then we're going to move to design phase. A group of people, they're called designer. They're going to do a design of the software. Before physically creating the software, we're going to design it. And we have a group of people that will do designing. Once the designing is done, we're going to start developing. What is developing? Nothing but creating a software. There's a group of people called developers. They do physical coding of that application to make it functional. So they do coding on programming language, for example, Java, Ruby, Python, any one of them or more. There are so many different type of programming language. So they're going to do those coding to develop that software. Once that that software is developed and functioning, right? So this is where it was only an idea. This is where it was designed. This is where it came to reality, right? It's someone built it already. Now, testers, this is where we sit, system testing phase. You and I, whatever we're learning, we sit here. And once they said, you know, the developer says, hey, we have done our part, we have coded that application and it's not working. Now it's working and we're going to say, okay, let us test it. So once this is working, we're going to start testing here. We are going to take that physical application from here to there and start testing. And we'll look for any issues or any faults in that application. If we find anything, we're going to report it back to them. We're going to say, hey, you built it, but these are the things broken. Can you fix it? Once they fix it, they'll send it back to us again saying, hey, we fixed it. Retest it. We'll retest it. If we find more issues, we're going to say, hey, yeah, you fixed this, but you know something else is still broken. Fix it. They're going to fix it, send it back to us. So there's a lot of back and forth here. This could be a month, 2 or 3, 6 months, depending on how big the project is. We're going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So once them developers and us testers agreed that it's fully functioning, we think it's good, we're going to say, okay, we're going to sign off on that. It's good, it's functioning, it is doing what it's supposed to do. Then we're going to say to these people, when they gave us the requirement, these people that could be external, that could be someone with money, they would just come in and say, hey, build me a software. And this is where we're going to finalize, say, hey, we built it. They're going to say, okay, thank you, you built it, but I want to test it myself. They're going to come back here and say, okay, they're going to say, you built it, you test it, and now I want to test it to make sure it is working. So they're going to come back here and test it. And if they say, okay, it is working fine, now they're going to accept it. If this doesn't work fine, they're going to reject it and say, hey, can you fix these things? Because I think, you know, this is not what we talked about. And, you know, their meeting happens there and we find a middle ground and eventually they accept it. Once they accept it, that application moves to production. And production is an environment where it is accessible to public. You see, like the wall I said right here, as long this application is inside this wall, no one has access to it, only the IT company. So once they accept it and move it to production, everybody has access to it. Now everybody's using it and have access to it. And then, you know, the cutover phase, this is where like some user training happens and stuff. Maintenance phase, right? Software is like every 6 months you need to upgrade, you need to add new features, things like that. So this happens in the maintenance phase. And here you're seeing the configuration phase. This is where basically there's so much documentation that goes on in each phases. All the documentation gets stored here. Final version of each documents gets stored here. So this is pretty much the process of building a software. What do you guys think? Do you understand this? Or you have questions?
Brother Qadir, can you just elaborate on the UAT phase again, please?
So UAT phase is where so first, if you understand this phase, then this gets easier. So in this phase, right, user requirement phase, and let's assume an external company or client comes in and say, I want to build a software. It's like Facebook. Let's just take an example of Facebook. Say, I want you to create an application. It looks like Facebook and it does same thing as Facebook. So we're gonna say, okay, fine, we can build it. We are a software company. We build softwares. So we are sitting right here. We are right here in this boundary within this house. We're gonna say, yeah, that's fine. Give us 2 million and give us 6 months. We're gonna build it. So and then, you know, we'll go back and forth and when we agreed on this, right? When we agree on this two party, when we agree on this, we're going to move to planning phase, right? And you understand everything about from this to planning phase. Now, from planning to design, developing, testing, we have done everything. Now we're going to say, hey, we have done everything. We think it's fine. In here, everybody's gonna, after us testing, everybody's gonna say it is fine, it's working. Take your application and give us our rest of the money. They're gonna say, okay, fine, you said it's working, but I also need to verify it. So they're gonna do another round of testing here. These people, client, user, or business people, they're gonna say, you tested it, you built it and everything, we understand and we agree, but I want to see it for myself. So here they're gonna come and test it again, retest it, and if they find it okay, they will accept it and give us our rest of our money back. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does UAT stand for something
Yeah,
or
it does. User acceptance testing.
okay, user acceptance testing?
I want you to understand like what the flow I just explained, and then we're going to get into technicality of it. There is a lot of technicality behind it. Before I go there, I want you to understand in plain language. So do we understand the flow now? How a software product being built?
Yeah.
Any questions, guys? All right, guys, get ready to take some notes. It's going to get a little bit complicated now. So please requesting you to take some notes. So let's talk about this. Let's see. Can I request if Brother Samad here or let me see who's here. Siddiq, Brother Siddiq, are you in today?
Yes.
Do you want to try? Well, we have two Siddiq, one from, I'm talking about the one from last batch, not the new person.
Are you asking about Sadiq?
Siddiq, yes, brother, are you in?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, so while I'm sharing my screen, can you please explain this phase, who sits here and what activities happens here?
So the user requirement phase, that's the phase you're asking about, the
Yeah.
one you circled.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's basically where it's the phase, the initial phase, like you explained, it's where the stakeholders, aka client, the people with the money, the people with the requirement of the software itself, that will come in and speak to us in this box, who are the IT company, and basically they will hash out all the requirements that they need specific to the client's need for their specific software.
The document that they
Documentation, yes, it's all the documentation that's all listed out exactly, exactly what's required step by step.
What do we call that document in this phase?
Pardon?
What do we call the document what is the technical term of this document?
The technical.
The technical term of the document or the name of the document?
Analysis requirement document.
So we have SRS, right? You remember
Sorry,
SRS?
BRD and SRS. Yeah, it's the same. Like system requirement specifications or business requirement documents. I beg your pardon. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Okay, cool. So, all right, so let's go over it again. So guys, we need to understand like who sits here and what are the activities happens here. So here, two groups of people sits here. One is the client. So client is the group of people with the money, with the idea and the requirement. And then we have from our end, right? We have business analyst, BA, short form is BA, business analyst. They sit here. And these two, feel free to take notes, guys. So they sit here and they discuss about the requirement and finalize it. And the requirement that clients comes in with, it's a plain English language requirement. It's nothing fancy. They come up with their idea because they're not from IT industry, right? They're external people and they don't have IT knowledge. So they just come in with some idea, and obviously they have a document. It could be in a Word format or anything, PowerPoint presentation, could be anything. So just understand, right? Here, client sits here with business analyst. Clients comes in with their requirement, and they have multiple meetings here about the requirement itself, about the budget, about the timeline, all of this. Once everything gets finalized here, client disappears, right? From here, client disappears, but we still have our business analyst and the requirement we get from the client, right? So business analyst, BA, brings that document, converts that document into a bit technical document called SRS. SRS stands for System Requirement Specification. So here, business analyst sits here with the plain language document, and they convert the document into a bit technical document called SRS. That SRS gets finalized here. Once that gets finalized, obviously here, you know, weeks, months, depending on the size of the application, you know, the business analyst, they sit here, finalize the document, converts the document, and a review process, approval process goes in here. It takes weeks, months, depending on the size and the complexity of that application. Once that requirement document gets finalized, it gets pushed to designer here in the design phase to do the designing, right? So they send this document to the designer, so designer do the designing of that application or the document, right? And once we have the document and the design mock-up of that application, it gets sent to the developers. This is where the developers are sitting. And what do? They do coding. They do the source coding of that application from the document and from that mock-up, the design. And once they're done with the coding, they're going to do an initial testing, and they will do the testing in the code level, and they will do the testing, and those testing called unit and integration testing. You'll learn about it later, but just hear this word. I want you to get familiarized with those words. So developers do their coding, and then they build that application, and then they will do internal testing on the code level, whatever the language they use to do coding, either if it's Java, Ruby, or Python, C#, depending.
Unit and
Integration testing. So once that is done, they're going to send that application to this group of people. And here, you and I will be sitting to do our testing. We're going to sit here with our process, and we will do our testing. Once we get the green light from the developers, hey, the application is ready, go ahead and test. We start our testing. And testing itself has a process involved, and we will learn about the entire process. Now, we do our testing, and obviously we find issues, and we're going to report it to them and say, hey, we found this issue. We go back and forth, like I was saying. We'll go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. God knows how many times. So once we both party, we are done, we're finalized, and we say, okay, we're good to go. We don't see any issues in this application. We are ready to hand it over to the client. Now we're gonna say, okay, we're gonna say to the client, application is ready, come and take it. Now, this is where they're going to come back again, and they're going to say, thank you very much, but we want to test it again. So you can see 3 levels of testing happens. 1 level of testing is done by the developers. Right here, right? Developers does 1 level of testing, then testers does multiple level of testing, and then here on the UAT phase, user acceptance testing happens. So who is the user? This is the user. The main people who give us the requirement, they'll come back and they'll do their testing and say, okay, we have tested, maybe they'll provide some feedback, or maybe they'll say we are satisfied. So this is what happens here. Once they do their testing and it is done and it's ready to hit the market, it's going to move to production. This is where everybody will have access to the application. Prior to that, no one has. You see, this is like a boundary wall all across. Nobody has access to it until you're within that software company. So that application moves to production, and once that moves to production, everybody access that application. But some application is more complex, so it requires user training. So user training happens here, and then obviously eventually you need to do upgrade. So this happens in the maintenance phase. All the upgrade happens here. And this is just think of it as a repository. It's a library of documentation. This is where all the documentation gets saved. This does not get any easier than that in terms of explaining. So let's talk, guys. How do you feel?
Qadir, just one question regarding the configuration phase. You mentioned that it's a repository for all the documentation. Does that eventually become the property of the client, or does it remain with the IT department that developed it?
No, it remains with us. So if in some cases, if we need to refer to the document, it is there. So it is our property. It's inside the barricade. So it belongs to us.
Okay, thank you.
So, Qadir, I have a question.
Yeah.
So who will take care of this configuration phase, like documentation?
Who takes care of it, you're saying?
Yeah.
So this is everybody's contribution. So remember in the planning phase, we said a document gets created by the business analyst. They're going to create this document and they're going to store their final version of the document in configuration phase. Designer will create their document will be stored here. Developers will create their document, it will be stored here. Us QA will create our document, that will be stored here. So think of it as a shared drive. Think of it as a library. They may or may not call it configuration phase. One thing, guys, I forgot to mention, IT industry, each company works differently in a unique way. So nothing is standardized. There is no one is going to each company and verifying, hey, if you're following the process or not. So each company is working in their own ways, but obviously there is a standard that pretty much everybody follow, and we are trying to teach you the popular method right here. If you work in two different companies, you're going to see night and day difference. One company might be very, very organized, and the next company might be very loose when it comes to process and everything. So it depends, but when you're learning, you have to learn the best materials, and we're trying to give you the best materials. So when it comes to configuration phase, think of it as a library. Think of it as a shared drive, accessible by anyone and everyone within that company. They may or may not call it as a configuration phase when you go to actual job, but understand what it is once you see the documentation being stored in different places.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe we did a decent job explaining. So Redwan, I'm going to stop sharing now that it will make sense to them more. I'll let you continue with your presentation.
Yes, brother. 1 second.
Well, Radwan is trying to figure out, oh, he did, okay, cool. At any point, you can stop us and ask your question. So Radwan, please continue.
All right, so does anybody have any questions regarding any phases? Yes, Sister Husnaullah, you there? All right.
Yes,
Yes, you have a question?
no.
Okay, thank you. All right, so these are the phases. We also have it in the Google Classroom. If anybody needs any kind of help with any phases, we have it there. Also, we will have group studies within this week. So if you have time, you can join. It will be uploaded on the Google Class. It will be uploaded on WhatsApp, also on the Microsoft Teams. So so would anyone like to try and go ahead with the SDLC process to give an example of it? Anyone would like to give a try? Anyone from the last badge?
I think brother Mohammed Haq had his hand raised. You want, please give it a try, brother.
Yeah, so in this requirement phase, the client sit with the with their own documents, which is URS is a plain and they come up with the decision. So if they agree, then this thing goes ahead and goes to the planning phase. And planning phase, we sit with that user requirement specification paper with BA, business analyst, and the client, and that documents that is SRS. And after this planning phase, these documents are shared between all the group. And after the planning phase, people print type design of whatever as per that document requirement or SRS documents, and it will be shared between the team. The development
Is it only me or
sit with
can
that
everybody hear him?
SRS.
Brother's
Nobody
mic
can hear?
breaks down. Your mic breaks down. It's not very clear, but it's fine. We understand that you have an understanding of this. Very good, brother. We can continue this at another meeting of your explanation. But good explanation, good understanding. Redwan, continue.
I think we should have someone from the last batch explaining this. This is very important, guys. So
I can try.
yes, Abdus, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
So this is the SDLC, software development lifecycle, right? We're going to be software testers. So the first thing we went over is what is a software, right? And now we're discussing, okay, so how does a software come into existence? So it has cycles, phases, right? So the first one is the user requirement phase. So this is where basically the customer comes to an IT company and tells them, hey, I want you to make me a software, a website, an app, and this is what I want it to do. Let's say they have a shop, whatever it is. Now they want an app, and they want the app to have this and like different features. So now obviously the document they have, which is called the URS, It's gonna be a plain document, probably in Microsoft Word or Google Docs, or maybe even a physical copy. So in this phase, the business analyst on behalf of the IT company, they're gonna sit with the customer and look through that. And then the business analyst is gonna convert that URS, the user requirement specification, that simple document, into something more technical, which we call the SRS, and that happens in the planning phase. And then that is given, the BA then in the planning phase sends that, he converts the URS, the plain document, into a more technical document, the SRS, the system requirement specification. And then he sends it out to the designers, the developers, and the testers. So that's the planning phase. And then now you have the designing phase, right? So in the designing phase, the architects, they start designing the SRS. They start creating mock-ups and designs, and then they pass it on to the developers, which is the development phase. Now, in this phase, the developers, they start building it, right? They start building the software, and they perform 2 tests, unit and integration. And once they have built it, then it goes to the system testing phase. And that's where we come in and we test the software, right? And there's a whole, we learn in future, there's a whole, another life cycle, which is called the SDLC software testing life cycle. So in the system testing phase where our work takes place, we test the software. And then once we have tested it, then like Adibay was saying, now before it can go in, the software can become live, the customer will obviously want to test it and make sure it's all right. So that's the UAT phase. So that's the user acceptance testing phase. So this is where user will have their own tester, user meaning the customer, it will probably have their own tester or get a third-party company to test the software to make sure, what they're paying for actually works, is correct, and it is what they wanted. So once they test it and it's good to go, then it goes into deployment phase. And this is where, the product goes live. So, the product is deployed. And then afterwards, you have the cutover phase. That's where, edits are made, a user manual is created, and then a maintenance phase where if new features or upgrades are needed or modifications, etc. And then, everything is saved into the CM library. That's about it. Thank you.
I think this was really well done. Of this Samad, right?
You right.
Samad, this was really well done. Thank you. So when we are explaining this, we need to make sure that we are using the terminology that is industry standard and clean in the delivery and calm and collective. So this was really nice. I really liked it. Anyone else from last batch?
Can I give it a try, brother?
Sure.
So user requirement phase, this is where the client, the customer comes into the IT tech or the companies with their requirement, which is URS, user requirement specification. They sit down with the business analysis from the tech company to discuss their plans and their requirements and everything. Where business analysis take their URS and then they make it into a SRS, which is system requirement specification. Once the BA has the system requirement specification, then it goes on to the planning phase. This is where planning happens. Once SRS is done and planning is done, we move on to designing phase. This is where the designer design the website or applications or the program. Once designing is done, we move on to development phase. This is where the developer comes into play. They with their coding, their unit testing, integration testing, depending on the coding language they use. Once they're satisfied with their testing and coding, they would push it to the system testing phase, meaning the QA environment. This is where we come into play. We do a different testing cycle, which is SDLC, software testing life cycle. We're going to test the whole program. If we see something is wrong, we bring it back to the developers. They correct it, return it to us. Once we are satisfied that system is working good and it meets the requirement, that's when we move into the UAT phase, the user acceptance testing. This is where the client, the customer, they bring their third party, like they bring their own testers. Sometimes they bring third-party tester to test the software or the application to see if it meeting their standard, meeting their requirements or not. Once UAT phase is good, they accept the software. This is when we deploy the software, and that goes to deployment phase. And this is where end user have access to the program, application or the program. Once that is done, the next step is cutover phase. Some software need user training, or like this is where cutover phase, the user training happens. Once user training and everything is done, there's always maintenance phase. Every 6 months or every other month, software needs update, software need addition or modification. The maintenance phase has everything right there. And the CM library, which is configuration phase, this is where we store all the documentation with the README file or any like reference file or anything. And everybody from the SDLC, like QA, developer, business analysis, designer, everybody contribute to that. That's it.
Thank you, Sain. This was done beautifully. Ridwan, let me share my screen again, and I'll walk you guys through the homework, and then we will take it from there.
If you don't mind, once again, I'm a little bit confused about the
Cutover phase. Okay, I will explain that in a minute. Let's go over the homework, and then we will revisit it. Okay, guys, so Google Classroom, this is the assignment. This is my view. Your view would be something like this. So once you sign up, you should have this ribbon right here, right? You can see classes, you can see to do, and then when you click on IT solutions, you're gonna see, you'll have this. Let me zoom in a little bit. So you will have these tabs, right? Stream, class work, and people. So just focus on class work. This is where you're going to see everything. This work from last batch, I'm going to continue to update. If you go under documentation, there is a template for meeting minutes that we talked about today. You can have access to it. When you click on it, there is a document, PDF document. You can download it. Right. IT solutions document 1. This is what I am presenting every day. You have access to this document right here. What else? Okay. Rest, ignore. Then this is the team structure from last batch. Ignore it. Okay. Ignore everything else for now. Just go in this navigation bar, go into to do, click on to do. When you click on to do, you're going to see this task. Those of you sign up for Google Classroom, you're going to see this assignment. Class 2, which is today, SDLC, which is what we discussed today. The due date is Sunday, February 19, which is next week. My request to you, so what you have to do is click on it. And this is what we have asked you to do, right? Class 2 homework, SDLC, and these are the things we want you to do as a homework. What is SDLC? So basically explain in your own word what is SDLC. Right here, explain in your own word what is SDLC. Create a document, explain SDLC, and upload it. So first in your local, create a Word document. Explain what is SDLC and explain each and every phases of SDLC, right? Like right here, we talked about different phases of SDLC. right? What is user requirement phase? What is planning phase? What is design phase? Explain all of that. I have uploaded a document. Let me refresh. Okay, is there a document? I should have a document. Refresh. Okay, so I will give you access to this document. So I have already uploaded it. Not sure why it's not showing up there, but I will. Okay, so edit, upload my drive, save. Okay, so this document should be uploaded right here. So you should have access to this document. This document will give you access to this diagram, and then it will tell you what each one of them stands for. Do not copy and paste, try to understand this each phases and create your own document. Yes, you have this document as a reference, but do not copy and paste. This is, if you look at this document, it's explaining exactly what is user requirement phase, what is planning phase, what is configuration management phase, what is design phase, what is development phase, and so on. It's talking about everything, right? Do not copy and paste. Create a document like this. I don't care about the diagram, but at least your understanding of SDLC and the different phases of SDLC. Create a Word document, and what you do is right here you can click on this button, link the file, and mark it as done. Once you upload your file, right? You can upload your file right here, and then mark it as done, and it will come back to me. So every week you will have a task. When you click on to do, you will find a task and it has a due date. So any questions on the homework? Okay, fine. If you do not have any questions, someone had a question about this. So what was the question, brother? Was it configuration management phase?
There was cutover.
Cutover phase. So cutover phase, think of it as a user training. Some application is very straightforward. If somebody just give you access to that application, it's easy to use. But some application is complex. When you go to an actual work, you will find out like some application would require user training. So this application, if an application requires user training, in cutover phase, they do user training. So basically what they do would just give you a demo of how to use that application. That's what happens here.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so this is for next week. Throughout the week, guys, we have so many more activities. If you feel like you want to join, you can join. If you learn one word, is never bad. We are working with the existing new last batch people, trying to prepare them for the job market. So, but you really don't have to pay attention to it. I would recommend you, let me stop recording.